Good morning. Today is the 27th of December, 2 days after Christmas. I am very sad that Christmas is over. However, we have other things to look forward to, like the second coming. Today we'll be talking about, we'll be taking a pivot, as they say, a fork in the road, and we took a pivot. And we will be talking about the dreaded Omicron COVID virus. So sit back, relax. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang, and we have with us, of course, the lovely Pastor Eugene. But Pastor Eugene, how are you doing? How was your Christmas? I hope it was good. I hope it was nice. Did you get all the gifts you wanted this year?
All I want for Christmas
Is
Jesus.
Yep. Well, we got them. So, today I wanted to talk about the Omicron, the dreaded Omicron. And I know that we wanted to do kind of like a fireside chat with the staff, but I thought this was pretty pertinent, especially because I think there's kind of an uptick in cases, and also there's a uptick in anxiety and worry that's going on. And I know we've done an Omicron episode before in a current event section, and we've done COVID before. Actually, COVID was the first episode that we ever aired. Fun fact, trivia.
Okay.
Yep. So, that's honestly how we started. And we are back full circle. And today we'll be talking about this COVID-19 variant. Today it seems like the lines between careful caution and anxiety are being blurred. We want to be safe and be wise, but are oftentimes led to perhaps conclusions that could be unreasonable because of what we've been hearing and what we're used to from 2020. There's just a lot of baggage there. So I just wanted to talk about this variant. Obviously, neither of us are epidemiologists, so I want to link our resources here in the description page. So please check those out during, after the episode. So let's talk about this variant. Pastor Gene, why is there such a craze all of a sudden? I feel like people were okay about a week ago, and now all of a sudden there is a huge craze for testing and anxiety. What has changed? Omicron has been, I guess, active for more than a week, more than a couple weeks. So I'm just wondering, why all of a sudden last week people were laughing and had no masks on. All of a sudden everyone is masked and is just kind of nervous. So I just want to know maybe what the difference is, what's going on. Is it the holidays? Is it gathering with family? What is it? What is, why the craze all of a sudden?
We're still getting metrics in from this variant, so maybe the uncertainty of it. I don't know, man. I
I
can't
see.
I can't read people's minds. I just know that by all available metrics, this is much more
Oh
contagious
yeah.
than Delta, which was more contagious than the original
Yep.
variant, original strain, excuse me, and that this is much less deadly as well.
Yeah.
And so, the strain is less potent
Hmm.
uh, and more contagious. I suppose people don't even want, to get it. They don't want to get sick
Yeah.
before the holidays, maybe.
I've actually heard that this could possibly be like a form of nature's booster, because it's like a half dose that people are getting sick from, but not really too sick. And so your immune system will be even boosted even more than before.
Yeah. I mean, we are facing incredible times now where you'll have a survival rate of, whatever it is, 99.99 and on. But the response to it is anything but what the figures show.
Right.
And so when you have that, how does a Christian respond? How do we, do it in a manner that is perhaps, um, you know, sympathetic to a degree, but also
Uh,
at the same time, um, based on reality. Well, that's what Christianity is. It's
yeah.
not wishful thinking. We believe that Christ was born, Christ lived, he died, he was risen or raised, And that is reality. And so we live out that reality. We live out that truth. And, the same thing with this Omicron thing. It's we want to make sure that it's based on reality. So if it is, in fact, 70 times more contagious, it goes through all the masks that we know, right?
Except for the K95, right?
We don't even know
Oh, okay.
to what degree it really is
Right.
effective. People know it's more effective or most effective. We don't have anything above the N95 that we could possibly use on a
Yeah.
regular basis, unless you put yourself in a full hazmat suit, that kind of thing. Which
Ah,
I've seen some pictures of people doing.
like from Monsters Inc.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you not get that reference?
Hazmat suit?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Oh no.
Yeah. All right. Let's not call it Omicron. Let's call it what it is. It's the new virus, which is what was in the Greek alphabet. So the next variant that was discovered was NU in the Greek alphabet, right?
The new.
And it's called the new virus, but they didn't want to call it the new virus. So they skipped a new. And so the next letter after new was
oh,
Chi
Kai.
or XI, right?
Oh,
And so people were afraid that XI would be mistaken for the Chinese last name Xi Jinping, Xi, right? And so they took out XI. And so the WHO, the World Health Organization, moved on to that third letter, which is Omicron. It's not Omicron,
right.
it's Omicron.
Yes.
So all these politicians are saying Omicron. That's not a letter. And so, yeah, so Omicron's the next letter. And so people are now, saying this is the new letter. That's where it's from.
Yeah.
I just think it's ridiculous that we did all of these things. Obviously, is political, which is why it's frustrating. So it's not based on reality or truth. It's just all political sway. And when you recognize this, I'm not surprised that some people are frustrated over it.
Yeah.
And some people who have been following this narrative are deathly afraid of a virus that is even less deadlier than before, which was not deadly.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So if you're in your 20s, this is not gonna get you. But I think so. I listen to some people, epidemiologists, some people that I like in particular who are reasonable, like one of the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration. I listened to him recently. I listened to Dr. McCary from Johns Hopkins, and they have reasonable responses. But I don't think that's the point. The point is, no matter who you listen to, there are so many differing opinions on everything that people don't know who to believe. So what they might default to is um, the most cautious. So those are the people that you see in the media saying you should, triple mask and you should get triple vaxxed and you should, get all these medications, face shields, wear gloves and all that. Obviously, that has nothing to do with the spread, like gloves and hands, like hand sanitizers didn't do anything to mitigate. And we knew this since September of last year. But I think bottom line is if you're a Christian and you see all this happening, it's for us, it's up to us. And I've said this before, it's up to us to be wise, see where this is all leading. This is all leading to somewhere. There's a culture changing or shifting, or there's a wave coming. And where is this all leading to? Does it lead to the promulgation of truth? Does it lead to better living, meaning more freedom of expression and especially religion? Does it lead to all that? Or does it lessen that? And I think this is what we need to wake up to. And even if, this Omicron thing gets huge, what is it ultimately leading up to? That's the question I hope people are asking. We could go after statistic after statistic. Like UK released a study out today, and I'll just read you and we can link it. I'll give you the link, but
yes, please.
I'll just read you basically what the study is stating. So the UK government study says vaccinated people are 4.5 times more likely to get Omicron than the unvaccinated.
That's
And
weird.
so and so if you're vaccinated and you get COVID, it's most likely going to be Omicron,
Okay.
which is the less deadly version of the virus.
Okay.
But yeah, unvaccinated people, if they get it, obviously. So, I mean, you could take the study for what it is, right? But what's true for if you're vaccinated, and which most people in our church are, um, you shouldn't be afraid of getting it. And if you do get it, it's most likely going to be Omicron, that kind of thing, which is,
Okay.
at most it's, I think the, what do you call it? The prevailing symptoms are like a cold.
Okay.
It's a runny nose. So here are the top 5 Omicron symptoms: runny nose, headache, fatigue, sneezing, and sore throat. And so that's what it is. Those are the top 5 symptoms. I mean, we have people that in our church that have COVID even as we're recording now, and
Yeah.
they have a fever.
Yeah.
They have lost sense of smell, taste,
Yeah.
and so some of them are more heavier, severe,
Uh-huh.
and like flu-like symptoms, right? And so, thankfully we haven't had any hospitalizations or anything like that. But
Yeah.
people, it's not like just a cold to them, And so those are things that we need to put in place and understand. Sometimes you move with caution. However, my whole point is people are going to get colds, people are going to get flus, people are now going to get COVID.
Yeah.
What's the general response that we need to have when people get these things,
Uh-huh.
right? And the huge disappointment I have, and this is a huge disappointment for me, is that whenever someone has COVID, the first instinct that people have is, oh no, who are they next to?
Source tracing.
Not, oh no, how are they doing? And this is completely anti Christian. When someone gets sick, let's say, the Black Plague came in, like Martin Luther and his wife would visit those people.
Yeah.
Like, this is how Christians have always functioned. When people are sick, we visited them, we took care of them. And
Right.
I get it now in hospitals, they won't let you come in, and you could die from COVID and you won't see anybody in your family because they'll quarantine
Mm-hmm.
that person. And that's incredibly sad. But in the past, this has never been the case. And when people died of disease, um, Christians were the ones to flock to them and support, give them any kind of aid necessary, risking their own bodies, right? But Christians, or so called Christians, are now more afraid of their own bodies than those that are sick, those that are in need, those that obviously need our prayers and support. And they're just worried about their own bodies. And then their response is, well, I have somebody in my family that's immunocompromised. I mean, the answer is who doesn't? Who doesn't, right? And so that's something that has been pretty disappointing to me. And this is where I know I'm making fun of Omnicorn, but you know, in the end, it really is just a disappointment in the responses of people.
Yeah.
Instead of caring about others, we're more concerned about ourselves, and we put that excuse to, oh, I have someone that's immunocompromised or
Uh-huh.
something like that, even though they've been triple vaxxed, that kind of thing.
Right. Right. So if I could just kind of summarize about this Omicron virus, um, like you said, it is 70 times more contagious than the Delta variant. And the Delta variant, I think, was twice as more contagious than the original, making this 140 times more contagious than the original. And the original was already pretty contagious. I think that was, where people were very, very scared last year because it was so contagious. We didn't even know how it got spread. That's why people were wiping down groceries and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's I believe the R naught number was like 3, and and the flu was like 1 point something, right?
Uh-huh.
But at the time, that's what people were saying. And so for every infection, you have 3 people getting infected, and for the flu, it's like 1 point something. And so people were really scared. But that's like that's a broad generalized number. It's not the actual number that has happened.
Uh-huh.
And so when you continue to measure, people thought that masking would help People thought that vaccinations would help. And now we're seeing countries like the UK or countries like Israel who have been like most of the population, like upwards of 80 to 90% of the population are actually triple vaxxed.
Mm.
And they're seeing case numbers through the roof, record case numbers. Okay. So how do you respond to that? You know, maybe we need to get our fourth booster or fifth booster, whatever. So if you really believe in science and that's what people claim, and you see these things aren't working, why do you keep on investing in the things that aren't working? Or is it that if you have been vaccinated already, or if you've had COVID and you have, the antigen T cells and B cells already in your system that will come into, you know, like switch on once you get exposed to the virus, then I think we should study that. Again, if the science is already out there and this is readily available knowledge, and then you understand this and you're still scared, I'm not sure why. And I try to be reasonable. Look, if I'm going to visit my 90-plus-year-old grandma,
Yeah.
and I have been, I've taken all the, measures I could take, and I want to see her this Christmas. And then someone goes, "Could you take a test for her just to make sure that you're not infected and asymptomatic?"
Yeah.
I don't see why I wouldn't. You know what I mean? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying let's just be frivolous and just nonchalant about it. I'm saying it doesn't match up. Like our measures do not match up to the reality of the situation. And when people disagree with you, I really want to know why. Um, because in the end, I don't I don't think that you have to agree with me on any of these points. But I do think that if you're in the church, you need to understand that priorities that the Bible gives are priorities that the Bible gives. Worship is primary. And it's unreasonable to shut down worship for some kind of variant that you'll have a 99.99 plus chance of surviving, especially if you've already been, you know, doubly dosed or triply dosed or whatever it is, right? And so, if that's the case, why are you freaking out?
So I think most people would agree with you. But I think, one of the things that people are worried about is, what if we do have family members that are immunocompromised? And like you said, who doesn't? Who doesn't have people that are elderly in their family? Who doesn't have people that are immunocompromised these days? I'm just wondering, I understand what the statistics say. I understand that the reaction may not be as reasonable or measured, but it's more of like almost like a frantic grab at any test that they can get, and any booster that they can get. But I'm just wondering, what kind of wisdom then can we show when we are dealing with elderly people, when we are dealing with those who are immunocompromised? And this is something, personal for me too, as I'm thinking about it. Like, I don't see any symptoms. I want to see my parents. Should I get tested if I don't see symptoms? These are just things that I'm thinking about too. And so I guess, what is a wise thing for us to do as Christians? Not panicking, but also being careful.
So this is the issue that I have. The issue that I have is that we're all looking to, let's say, the federal government to give us these string of regulations so that we can be protected. What we've known since 2020 January is that the federal government can't protect. It doesn't matter who's in power. It doesn't matter if the guy you like or the guy you hate is in power. They can do nothing.
Yeah.
And so people are always saying, well, give us these generalized guidelines so that we can at least mitigate it. And so people are always looking first to the federal government to save us. What we've known from the vaccine is the federal government can do little to nothing to save us. What they can do is help the individual be informed and make support them in the decision that they're making. That's what the federal government could have done or should do. But instead of doing that, they think that by giving these regulations, they're saving lives. This is far from the case, as
Mm.
now we see our economy just on a downward spiral. But those are the things that I hope that we recognize as Christians. You have to make an informed decision. You have to make sure that you keep your priorities straight. We also have to understand that not every decision you make will be the most perfect or best decision, but it is your decision to make.
Yeah.
And so knowing that it's going to keep you humble, knowing that it's going to, make sure that once you have information, you will be able to change or adapt to the new information that you're getting. Because we're always getting new information, are we not? And so that's what we want to continue to do. Can I read you a Thomas Sowell quote? Actually, let me just give it to you. You can read it.
Thomas Sowell said, "The most basic question is not what is best, but who shall decide what is best."
And I think that goes down to it's really, really important that you pray for our leaders. Okay. Whether it's your elders or your local municipalities or even the federal government, uh, politicians that are placed in power over us. It's really important that we pray for them, that they make the right decisions. What we need to do is we're always so afraid of not making the best decision. That's what paralyzes us.
Uh huh.
And I hope that people understand that you will not always make the best decision. But what you can do, what is in your power is to try to be informed as much as possible and try to expect that certain levels of leadership, their job and responsibility is to inform you. Like one of the reasons why we do this podcast is to inform people basic stuff like wisdom, but biblical wisdom, not just any
Right.
kind of wisdom.
Right.
It's not political wisdom. It's biblical wisdom that we
Right.
see in the Bible that God is leading his people to understand in his word. And so when we say worship is priority, we're not just pulling it out of our butts. It's from the word of God.
Yeah.
And so when we see that it's not really about the question, it's about who is going to decide how to handle the question that's important. And if once that's established, when the question comes down to should I test before I see my grandparents, I think the answer is I hope that if it's in your conscience to do so, that you will do so because you have been readily informed.
Uh huh.
But you will not use that to judge another person. Okay? Many, many, many elderly people, immunocompromised people, before COVID died of the flu. They got it from somewhere,
Right.
right?
Right.
But we don't go around blaming the other people that gave them the flu. We actually just lived lives normally. What if that flu now was twice as contagious and, deadlier? Then
Mhm.
does that change any of the morality? And that's the question that people have been grappling with. Um, and to answer those questions, I hope that we can give a good biblical response to how our bodies are temples of God, that we don't put anything inside our body that our consciences don't deem. And I think we talked about it in the mandate episode. But at the same time, we care for another person's body as much as we can. But
Yeah.
we're not we're not ubermenches, we're not supermen. We can't fix everything, nor can we be immune to every bad decision. So we do the best we can. I just don't see a lot of charity given with the decisions that are being made. And so even in our church, I have to really fight for us to not ever go back to mask mandating our church again. This is
Mhm.
something that I, if I were to regret anything about the season, it's about mask mandates. And people might be like, wow, that's kind of harsh. No, you might have saved spread, you might have saved lives. Perhaps. But one of the things that I even talked to my mom about is what we've lost, though, is we've lost this ability to assess risk reward. And by that I mean that when you do something, you lose something. When you do something else, you lose something. So what is it that we're doing that we're losing? And what is it that we're risking to gain? And so when we don't have even that basic ability to, you know, do this, then what kind of generation are we raising, right? How many years of education have our children permanently lost because we've masked? I mean, we're just going to continue to find studies later. And this generation, people are already calling it a lost generation. How sad is that, right? because we lost so much from not just the lockdowns, but also the masking. People are saying, well, kids could spread COVID. Yeah, kids could spread COVID, but what are you risking by masking children? What are you risking by closing down schools? What are you losing? Did you ever decide to assess that? And when people did bring out the news on this is what you would lose if you mask kids and if you close down schools, how did we respond to it in our craze over COVID? Um, did we have a healthy response based on reality, or was it purely emotional? And so when you even make a decision about should I test before visit my grandparents, I think the underlying the foundational thing that you need to understand is your decision based on anxiety, or is it based on prudence, perhaps a little caution, but on reality? And I'm afraid that for a lot of people, especially when it's concerning this virus, it's more emotional than anything else. Just this virus has brought about so much emotion in our generation. And people who make decisions overly on emotion know that it's easily manipulatable, right? Manipulatable? Is that the word?
Manipulatable.
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 Anyway, you can get manipulated, right?
Uh-huh.
And so we see that, with every single new news headline, it's like directed toward your emotion, right? Like a death surpassed 800,000, in the US from COVID. Yeah, what has that craze led us to? Because in the first year in 2020, what was the death count? Like 250,000, and people were raging. So how many this year if it's over 800,000? Aren't we more than double last year, right? And so that's where we are. Did this craze lead us to a less death rate from a less potent variant, or did it lead to more deaths? Why is it leading to more deaths? And I mentioned this on Sunday, but if you look at the numbers uh, in 2020, every single other major leading death statistics ticked up. And so you have more people dying of heart disease than the year before, more people dying of suicide, more people dying of drug overdose. In fact, I believe it's out now that fentanyl overdoses for 18 to what is it, 40 something, that age range
Hmm.
is at an all-time high. It's the number one killer of that age group. Why is fentanyl on the rise, and why does it seem like the Mexican cartels, the government, when we have these open borders, but when they're bringing it in, it looks like they have an unlimited amount of fentanyl they're bringing in. So when people talk about just Omicron, um, it's not that simple. And who's supposed to know how to handle it? The people who can think beyond one dimensional, like just one dimensionally, right? And who should they be? They should be the leaders. And if they're not, and they're only talking one dimensional, then you're in trouble. And so that's why we got to continue to pray for leaders. Pray that your elders don't think one dimensionally. Pray that your local municipality and their leaders, like your mayor, your town's mayor, or whatever it is, will be able to think broadly, future, think about your children, things like that. And especially pray for our president and our federal government, those that have power, so that they can make decisions that are wise and that are just, that won't lead to more, you know, destruction, that won't lead to more loss in every area of life.
So I know that we should be able to trust our leaders, that we should make wise decisions. But I guess my question is more of, I mean, we're in this situation right now where oftentimes we can't trust our leaders, and we don't know what the wise thing to do is. So I guess just practically, what is the wise thing to do? Like, should we get tested, or I mean, I know that we have to be, again, praying for wisdom and discernment as we're doing this, and we're supposed to be doing things that do not bind our conscience. But so I guess then, what is the informed wise decision to make when it comes to testing, when it comes to quarantining, when it comes to sharing with other people, who may have been exposed through you? Like, what is the wise thing to do then in these different areas?
Uh, get about 16 boosters.
16 boosters.
I think that's the magic number.
There's one out right now. So wait 15 more years.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I hope that I could get across is being informed is incredibly important. When people try to, um, what do you call it, suppress information,
Yeah.
that's when you start to, then you know you got to get. That's where your concern should lie.
Google's doing that.
Google has been doing it for when the Great Barrington Declaration came out. Google came like suppressed that like
Yeah.
crazy, and that was last year, like May. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've been doing that. And so when people are like, well, I don't want you to get too political. No, this is super political. This is above politics. When when you know that agencies or companies are suppressing the truth and information for you to know how to make good informed decisions, that's not political. This is just the truth. And so I hope people understand that, our job isn't to push you towards some kind of secular political party, but is to hopefully you see that there are biblical principles and there are basic biblical principles that everyone should understand. Like you should not suppress the truth. You should understand about First Corinthians chapter 6, 19 to 20, that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. That's why you regard it as a holy vessel for God. You don't just put anything in there because fear, you put things in there informed. And I believe people have made those informed decisions. Then you should be at peace. But if you did it out of fear, then that's why your conscience is a wreck right now, because you did it out of fear, right? And I respect people's decisions. I respect people who got a vaccine who didn't know because Pfizer lied, who didn't know that this vaccine is not just R&D, but also the development was based on fetal cell research, right? And they'll never put in another like vaccine again. I respect that. But when you know and you do it, and you know that's going against your conscience, then yeah, that's something that I would think you would have an issue with. I mean, I have an issue because your conscience is telling you otherwise, right? But if it's solely like, oh, if I get a vaccine, then I won't spread it. And then the data comes out that's like vaccinated people are just spreading, especially Omicron. They're
Yeah.
spreading it like wildfire. Um, then what you thought was truth just is now false. And how are you going to handle that? Are you going to handle that emotionally with anger, saying, oh, you don't know anything that you're talking about? This is just preliminary statistics, right? We don't know for sure. No, we know for sure. This is not in the UK. This is also South Africa. This is also India. This is also most definitely in Israel. And we don't have any reason to believe it will be any different in the US, right? And so if that's the case and you did your research or you heard about it, how are you responding? And so what I really hope is that people respond well. Why? Why is it important that you respond well? Because in First Corinthians 6:19, when after it talks about your bodies being a holy temple, it says, you are not your own. You were bought with a price. And then it says, therefore, honor God with your bodies. What we're to do is we're to honor God with our bodies because this is a temple of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit resides in this temple, then I need to honor God with it. And now now what we're going to do is we're going to manipulate this verse into thinking that it's all about whatever the secular media tells us honoring God is. No, completely wrong. Completely wrong. Because the whole context about that is sinning against the body or sinning against your own body. This is talking about sexual immorality, but it's based on this truth, right? What you do with your body is in relation to your understanding of who God is. It's all about theology, right? And so if you believe life is sacred, you believe that you can't put anything in your body that you don't know 100% of. This is different from the seatbelt metaphor that people are using, right? You can agree or disagree with the seatbelt thing. We're not here to debate that. But this is different. You're not inserting a seatbelt into your body, right? You're putting on top of your body. This is not the same argument. But I don't know. Have you heard the seatbelt thing before?
I haven't.
Well, I mean, people are like, what's so wrong about the vaccine when the government mandated
Mandate seatbelts.
seatbelts, you didn't
Right, right, right.
complain. Yeah, actually, people did complain, but
Yeah. Click
people,
it or ticket.
yeah, that whole motto and that push came from the government, and now people don't think twice, right?
Yeah.
And then we're thoroughly convinced that seatbelts save lives, right? And then no one questions it, right? But the whole thing about science is that you should continue to question it, especially if it's novel, right? Maybe the seatbelt thing is at rest. I don't know. But maybe not. If there's evidence to the contrary, will anybody bring it up? And that's what science is revisiting and questioning and continuing to find out, especially if you have new information about the efficacy of whatever, remedy or therapeutic you thought of or vaccine you came up with, right? And not only that, it's about the morality of how this thing was conjured up, right? So if a seatbelt was made out of, I don't know, human skin, and that's the only way you can make it, but it still saves your lives, would you use it? I think the majority of people would say, no, that's disgusting. And there's something morally wrong with making something out of human skin. I think that's what people would naturally say. Why not for the vaccine? That's where I'm confused. Why can't people have a moral objection to the vaccine based on what we know to be true, where they used fetal cell research and for not just for development, but also for R&D, right? Why can't people have a moral objection to it? Because your grandma might die. Well, no, that's not a good response. That's not a good theological or scientific response. And that's an emotional response. It is a response. And I don't want to, completely put that on the side. Like I said, I also have a grandma. I want to visit. She's in my mind when I visit. Um, like COVID is in the back of my head. It really is. But those are things that I hope people can see. It gets complicated, and I hope I didn't confuse you more, but I don't want you to stay in that simplistic mindset where it's just black and white for you. It can be complex, and the more complex it gets, the more charity we should show, should we not? But we see less charity, especially when it's concerning the vaccine, its mandates, especially when it's concerning like any kind of new variant, we immediately go into like anxiety mode, which is sinful.
So I know you're explaining, I guess, the thinking behind the decisions that we're making, like the principle behind the actual decisions that we make. But I'm wondering, so should we get tested? Or would you get tested? Let me ask it that way.
If someone asked me to get tested, I would just get tested because I don't want to stumble the person.
Okay.
I wouldn't ever knowingly get tested, but that's me personally. I don't know why you should be bound by what I said
Uh,
because this is not,
right, right,
in
right.
my opinion, a moral issue.
Hmm.
It's not a theological issue.
Uh-huh.
I think getting tested is a waste of resources. It's a waste of, if Omicron, all the things, like after everything that I've said,
Right,
if it's 70 times more contagious, which makes it at least in the minimum 140 times more contagious than the original variant, which was already contagious.
right.
Um, what is testing going to do? By the time you get tested, you probably infected like 20 people
Yeah,
plus, and
yeah,
they infected like 200 people plus.
yeah.
And so, what is the point? I don't know the point. Honestly, you can explain it to me. If you get tested, then you might be asymptomatic and stay home. What about, the 10 days you thought you were, you know, COVID free, but you were symptomatic? How long
Yeah.
is the symptomatic stage?
Right, right,
How long
right.
are you symptomatic? Oh, no, I'm sorry. How long are you asymptomatic
Right.
while carrying a viral load? Do you know
Right.
this? You don't know that. You
No,
don't know that.
no,
There's
no.
so many things we don't know because we just didn't do the research. How effective is the N95 mask in protecting against, you spreading? Is it 10%? Is it 20? Is it 30? Is it 5? Is
Hmm.
it 1? Well,
Hmm.
people are like, well, even if it's 1%, shouldn't we use it? No, absolutely not. We shouldn't use it if it's 1%, because you lose so much more by putting on a mask
Yeah.
than putting it on because you would mitigate it by 1%. That's a
Right.
ridiculous argument. And so, what is the risk reward factor? What is involved in calculating that? Are you informed enough to make that decision? And if you're not, then I would just stay humble about it. I wouldn't enforce my opinions on anybody else. And so, you even asking me, I'll tell you what I do
Right.
based on the information I have. In my circle, in particular, I think I'm a little more informed than the average layperson because I just take time to study it because I really care for our church members. I
Right.
don't want them to, I don't want to make a bad decision that will affect our church a lot.
Right.
But by the grace of God, and it really is the grace of God, we didn't know as much as we do now. And I don't think we know much even now. Our church was never a vector of transmission. We never had an outbreak in our church. If people got sick, it was one or two on the
Mhm.
side, and it was because they were hanging out, eating lunch, and putting their heads in each other's armpits or something. And honest, that's a true story, right? And so I don't know if you're listening, bro, but that was unwise. And but I mean, those are outside of church, right? So our church was never a chief vector of transmission.
Yeah.
By the grace of God. So we never had to shut down. We never had to overly do these crazy mandated stuff. And we used just regular caution because we did the risk assessment. We saw what kind of people were dying from this disease, what kind of people were most susceptible. We asked those people to take extra care, right? And we were fine. And if people got sick, I always, I recommend certain supplements, right? What is it?
Way.
Uh,
Always way.
the classic vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc. I like the herbal supplement, elderberry. But that's me personally. I'm not making a medical.
Elderberry, because you're an elder.
No. Anyway, and so this is not a medical kind of, what is that, suggestion. This is just what I believe to work because of the studies that I've read,
Yeah.
the people that have produced these studies, which have not been peer reviewed. So I can't even say it should belong in like medical journals yet, right?
Yeah.
But they seem reasonable to me, right? And so those are things that I have personally done, and um, I would suggest it on a personal level, but I wouldn't go and say it in a public level. I think those are
Right.
two
Right.
different things, right?
Yeah.
So you can always ask me what I think, and I'll tell you my thoughts. But if you know a doctor or a medical professional and you ask them and you trust that person, then you should follow what they do,
Yeah.
right? But if a doctor or some medical professional tells you their opinion and you don't trust them, then I don't think you have a trust relationship between, you know, that professional and you. Then that's troublesome. This is where a lot of our people, especially in this country, that's the dilemma that we're facing. Some doctors will just get vaccinated. I was like, oh well, I lost a leg. What should I do? You should get back. You should get the second,
Mhm.
shot. And so we know of instances now where people had like palsy after the first shot, and then they took a second shot after that, and so I think they have permanent palsy now.
Mm.
And there is a small minority of the population. Like this is very, very rare. We're not trying to scare people. It's very rare that you would get this. Um, but one of the more recent studies that I've read is, cutaneous responses from the vaccine are up to about 10% of the studies that I've read. And your wife actually had a cutaneous response, and one of that,
Yeah.
she got shingles, right?
Yeah.
So that's a real possibility. And so my whole thing is, I don't want to scare people into not getting the vaccine, but isn't it, if you're going to mandate it, isn't it your responsibility to tell people what the potential side effects could be? It's not zero. That's for sure. There's various reports that we know are not going to put that statistic at zero. It's not zero.
Yeah.
There's going to be some, bad responses to the vaccine. So what is that number? Do you know? Why don't you know? Things like that. So when people are afraid of taking it because they don't feel like they're fully informed, for me, that's fine. Don't
Yeah.
take it then,
Yeah.
Um, Personally, I've made the decision to take it, and I was fortunate. I was fine, right? Which
Yeah.
is the vast majority of us. We're going to be fine. And if you decided not to take it for whatever reason, I respect that. There are what 30% of healthcare workers in New York City or something like that that didn't get vaccinated.
Healthcare workers.
That are about to get the axe, or they got the axe already, right?
Yep.
And so when we see things like that, it just reinforces what I'm trying to say is when it comes down from federal mandates, when it comes down without taking into consideration anybody's personal, not just beliefs, but their needs, that's what's tyrannical. That's why they call them draconian measures, because they are severe. They are unreasonable. And so, yeah, we are against mandates. It is anti like Bible, but it's anti like reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no reason to go for it. But if you fear monger, if you're emotionally pulled by this, then yeah, you're definitely gonna, you're not gonna like this episode. That's for sure, right? But
Yeah.
if you want to be reasonable, then I hope that you can see that this is a much more complex matter than people may want you to think it is, because of these lockdowns and these like mandates. Now we see, you know, supply chains disrupted, truck drivers are being fired, right? Healthcare workers are being fired. All these things are happening, and they have no one else to blame except the people that mandated, except psych. Now they're blaming like, what is the most recent thing? They're blaming like grocery stores for overcharging, trying to make a profit. Yeah, you can only blame others. You'll never blame your draconian measures. But this is the world that we kind of live in. And I hope people get to see through it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just see through it. Know that it takes wisdom to make good decisions. And more importantly, this is what I'm saying, more important than the wisdom that you might gain from this is the charity that you would show to people that might slightly disagree with you on this. And I hope that people can show that kind of charity.
I thought it might be helpful if we just kind of went over the policy that we have at church. And you mentioned it a little before with the mask mandate and stuff like that, or the a lack of a mask mandate and stuff like that, which I did want to ask questions about. But as for our church, and most of our listeners are from our church, I'm just wondering, what is our policy on the vaccine, on testing, on what to do if we're exposed, what to do if we're tested positive? What is our policy on with these types of things?
So when the vaccines were readily available to the public, people did ask me, "Are you going to make a vaccine mandate for church?" And I responded, "Never," which took them by surprise. I think they
Uh-huh.
were expecting a more tempered response, like maybe we should do to a certain degree, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I said never. Um, I don't know why this is surprising. Like, I think you should get, your tetanus shot, or your whatever it is. I don't ask you for that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I don't see why I'm asking people for their vaccine status, especially now that we know that it doesn't matter if you have the vaccine if it's about spread.
Right.
Um, but I believe that your personal medical information is your personal medical information. We're here to focus on your spiritual life, which will lead into your bodily like responses, like what you do with the flesh, that kind of thing. And so I just don't think that vaccine status or whatever is healthy at all. And we see people with vaccine passports live in an incredibly unhealthy environment. Vaccine passports do jack as far as, sorry if your name is Jack, but it literally does nil as far as spread is concerned.
Sorry for if your name is Nil.
Uh, anyway, yeah, I mean, New York has the vaccine passport things, and now we know
Yeah.
that New York City has one of the highest case rates in the country,
Yep.
and they have vaccine passport. It doesn't do anything. And so, not only is it unreasonable, unscientific, not just unproven but disproven, but they still keep it up. it really invades your privacy, especially if you don't want to give up that information for whatever reason you want, right?
Yeah.
And it leads to people judging, saying, how dare you not get vaccinated when I think it's a good thing. And then, you have to go through that whole spiel again. Anyway, long story short, I said, we'll never do it. And we haven't. I just know because I know, as a pastor, I know most of our church pretty intimately. Uh, I know that almost everyone has gotten their vaccines, double doses. Almost everyone. Actually, I don't know anybody that didn't get the vaccine.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're in our church, then I just know that you did because I probably talked to you about it. But I'll never put it up for public record, right? I'll never put it in a database where I'll check you off or something like that. I think that can be manipulated and used against you. So, in purposes of, you know, protecting our sheep, this is what I would never do. Yeah. So that's a vaccine.
What if I'm exposed, or what policies are in place at our church if I'm exposed?
Right now,
Yes.
with Omicron, if you are exposed and you're asymptomatic, then don't worry about anything.
Okay.
Come do your regular thing, worship God,
Okay.
100%. Don't hold anything back. That's our policy. If you have been exposed and you start showing symptoms, meaning you have a fever,
Uh-huh.
maybe you lost taste and things like that, you're coughing, your throat is really sore, then stay home.
Yeah.
Stay home. Get better. I would say if you had the flu, I would say the same thing, which I yelled at Junzuk like many, many times. Junzuk can attest to this. When he had the flu or COVID or whatever he had and he was showing up last year, I yelled at him many times to go home.
Well deserved.
Anyway, yeah. If you're showing symptoms, then go home, rest up, come back after you're better. And this is good for you. It's good for other people too, right?
Is there like a requirement? I know we've kind of mentioned this. Is there a requirement if we are exposed and we are feeling symptoms? Do we have to get tested? Do we have to show the elders our test result, or do we have to do all these different types of things? Quarantine? And what are we supposed to do?
In our
Sh-
church, we don't
Yeah.
have that.
Okay.
So if you have been exposed and you have symptoms, we don't require you quarantine yourselves. A lot of families, though, choose to quarantine
The
themselves,
automatic.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just choose to. Yeah.
Maybe their doctor recommended it or whatnot. And so once you're symptom free, then you're welcome to come to our church. That's what it is.
Gotcha.
If you have symptoms and come to our church, I'm not going to kick you out, but I will reprimand you like I did Chinsuk.
Ah.
I will shame you. And
Yes.
so be ready to be shamed, that kind of thing. But I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, he's coming. He's out here to kill us all. I don't think like that, which you would not do for any other flu or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think like that, but I would strongly recommend they go home and rest for their sake and for the people that are going to be around them. Yeah. And if we have people that are, let's say, now it's really big, immunocompromised, right? But I hope people understand if you're immunocompromised and you get COVID, it's not 100% you're going to die.
Yep.
But we act like it is. Well, so what's the percentage if you're immunocompromised of you dying from this disease? What is it? Then act accordingly. You know what I mean? Take the precautions necessary.
Okay.
So it is pretty high. It's not low, but it's
Definitely.
not like 100% is my
Yeah.
point. Okay. And so one of the things that you really want to understand is what is immunocompromised? What does that mean? Do you know what that means?
It means that your immune system is weaker than normal. Let's
It
say.
means that your reaction time is much slower than the normal person who has a healthy immune system.
Uh-huh.
So that virus will go and do a ton of damage before your immune system can respond.
Uh-huh.
For older people, they are naturally immunocompromised because their immune systems are just going to be slower.
Yep.
So that's why the vaccines help because it'll boost your immune system. So the vaccines aren't like classical vaccines where your immune system will already be ready to fire up and go. It's more of a mRNA therapeutic, right? So it'll help with the protein spikes that have been put in your system. It'll help you fend off any kind of future because it's programmed into, obviously your system. And so it's a little different. And so I don't know if we can classically define it as a vaccine, But fact of the matter is, we've seen it proven to help people fend off severe illness, which is the point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So light illness, if you get a cough or you're cold, or even if you're out for a few days, that's no reason to be alarmed. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
What if we are positive? What if we do test and we test positive? What is our church's policy on people that do test positive?
If you decided to get a test and you tested positive, then our church's policy is that you should come back once you get a negative test.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because you chose to see if you're positive or negative, right? So
Yeah.
you want to get that negative test when you come back. I think that's only reasonable. So I know that maybe it might not coincide with the whole symptom thing, but if you chose to get a test and it is a positive test, then you chose to get it because you wanted to see it negative. Yes? So
Yes.
it's on your conscience. So I would try to support that. Then get the negative test and come back.
Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. I did want to ask you about the mask mandate. There are those that may think, if only we wore masks, the spread would be mitigated or slowed down. It's just one change that we need to make, and it could possibly even save somebody's life. So why wouldn't you take that mask? Are masks that big of an inconvenience that we wouldn't have people wear them? How would we respond to that kind of thinking?
There was a recent study out done by Michigan, and this is about mask mandates in schools. Bottom line from that study, there's no difference between masking and not masking in these schools. The case rates were the same. The increases were basically the same. If you had masks on, then the increases were slightly slower than the unmasked school. However, it was still basically the same, as my point. You can find this online in Michigan, and I guess you'll link that too. We'll put in one of the links along with the whole UK study. If you really want to know all this, that's fine. But apparently, if that's the case, then making any kind of rules around masks seems pretty futile to me, especially with what you lose when you mask kids. There are independent studies on this. Means that this has not been peer reviewed, but hopefully it will be peer reviewed and it will go into medical journals. That kid, and then this is, to me, it seems like common sense. So there's no reason for me to disbelieve it. But again, if you want it to be scientifically proven and sound fact, that kind of thing, then yeah, wait for the peer review. But multiple studies, not just in Michigan, not just in Florida, but this is across the board. So it's across the board from political spectrums. And this is why I think it's important that masking in schools deters learning and development in children. And that's a fact. Um, the way we respond with facial expressions, especially from our teachers and parents, are incredibly important for our young kids' development. It's absolutely true. There's no reason to disbelieve it, because we just know this is absolutely true. Um, Touch, facial expressions, the way we smile, the way we make an angry face, those are all embedded into a child. They learn by watching. If you look at our youngest ones, like our babies, we have an elder who has a beautiful young daughter, and she smiles just like her mom.
Hmm.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
She has a face just like her dad, right? But when she smiles just like her mom. Where did she get that? She got it by looking at her mom, right? And so that's part of a baby's development. Why would you want to mask and deter that for even like a microscopic amount? I would, for me, I would need evidence to the contrary for me to start masking my kids, that, oh, this is actually good for our kids to mask for the development. Not that it's bad. I already know it's bad. And so, yeah, I would need countervailing evidence uh, for me to start like masking my kids, saying this is better for the development. Absolutely untrue. And we know that kids aren't dying from this disease. What was it? If you took out the uh, kids with comorbidity rates that were high, What is it, like 20 to 30 kids died last year?
Mm,
I mean, this it's still tragic. 20 to 30 is something that we don't want to see. Not we don't want even want to see one, but we want to put that into perspective. So out of the 350, um, yeah, it was 20, and so those are things that I hope that parents will keep in mind when we do anything for our children. It's for the development. It's for their growth. Our prayer is that our child will grow up like Jesus grew up in this world with wisdom and in stature and in the favor of God. That's what we want for our kids, don't we?
yeah. So, just as a side note, I've been thinking about the economy these days. I'm quite the economist myself.
Well, you can't lie on
Um,
podcasts.
very economical, as they say. So speaking of
Different
economy,
meaning, but okay.
oh, it is.
That's fine.
I took econ. I know econ
Econ 101.
101. Yeah,
Yeah, buddy.
I didn't do well. However, I know supply and demand. Um, how does Omicron? What does that do to our econ?
First of all, it's not Omicron.
No, Omicron. What does Omicron do
It's
to our econ?
Omicron.
What does Omicron do to our econ?
So Omnicorn will eventually, and it already has, it has raised prices of everything. Um, because when you shut down the government, and I mentioned this before, but when you shut down like planes, you lay off pilots, airline workers, you lay off healthcare workers, you lay off truck drivers because they're not taking this vaccine that you've been mandating. There will be food shortages. There will be supply chain interruptions, right? There's all these things, and prices will go up. Inflation is now at what is it, 40-year high, right? This is something that we have not. That means it's reached a high in 1 year, an increase in 1 year that we've never seen before for 40 years. That means in 1 year, all these consumer prices have gone up, right? Over 6.8% now. I believe some estimates have it even as high as 14% if you add all the increases put together. That means whatever your price you were paying before, you're paying more than 10% of what it was before in just 1 year, right? And farmers are now responding too. Like when they're trying to get crops out there uh, the way they normally do, they can't. They can't get chemicals. They can't get fertilizers anymore because of all these things kind of pile up on each other. So they'll put down less fertilization. They'll hope that regular mineralization will make up for it. They'll say things like that. And because, they're hoping that the weather's okay. If the weather's not okay, let's say there's a drought or the winter's longer than it is, then we're in for a huge, um, a huge price increase, a commodity increase in 2022. And this is the warnings that we're getting from farmers now. Um, I think farmers are finally saying that commodities will jump toward asset valuation and we'll see true valuation come out from it. But political responses have been it's because farmers are greedy or something like that, or groceries are greedy, which is absolutely untrue. But all these things, this is just to kind of, you know, piggyback on what we've been talking about. All these things affect everything else. So just the COVID lockdown isn't just a COVID lockdown. It affects everything. And this is what, if you're a leader of a nation, you should understand. This is why we pray for our leaders. I hope they understand what they're doing instead of just blaming, let's say, the greed of farmers or something like that, which is not true, right? Yeah, it's not the, the increase of greed in farmers that we have food prices going up, or grocers that we have food prices going up. There are all these reasons why we have inflation. And it all did start and does start, we believe, with the whole COVID-19 shutdowns and vaccine mandates. It really does affect everything. I hope people understand. And so the whole risk reward factor, being able to assess, having that discernment is really important. And I think most of all, now knowing all this, most of all, I really always want to go back to our church, Christians, people of God need to have wisdom to understand that it's not so simple as maybe the world will say it is. But at the same time, we should also show charity to those that may not always have the same answer you do. And I hope that we take these two things into account.
Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. I wanted to just take some time and do something about a current event. Maybe a change of pace. I wanted to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home today.
I didn't see it.
I know you didn't see it, so this won't
Okay.
be a spoiler or anything like that. Crazy movie. Want me to tell you what happens, or
I thought you weren't going to spoil it, but you already said it was a crazy movie. So you're spoiling it.
Tom Holland is in it. Zendaya is also in it. Zendaya. What does she do for a living, by the way? Is she like a singer or something? No, I know she's an actress. No, I know, but what does she do originally? Is she like a singer, songwriter? Anyway, starring Tom Holland and Zendaya. And what the reason why I want to talk about Spider-Man was not only because I loved it, but because it is smashing box office records right now. It is the third biggest opening weekend of all time worldwide, and the second biggest of all time in the US, right after Endgame. And the reason why this movie is so big is because there are other Marvel movies that came out this past these 2 years, Eternals, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, all these different movies. They made headlines for topping the box office, but they were pandemic records. So it was records within the 2-year span. But however, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, is topping the box office compared to pre-pandemic records, which is insane. So the interesting thing that I wanted to bring up was that one article that I read attributed a part of this success to the fact that this movie does not have a woke agenda. Whereas other Marvel movies have been really pushing for this liberal LGBTQ woke agenda, Spider-Man had none of that. He wouldn't have any of it. Peter Parker. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that a very broad question?
No, it's a good question. I hope that Tobey Maguire's in it, and I hope that
This has to be erased. I can't even put this out there.
why? I didn't see it,
I know, but why
so
are
I'm
you
not spoiling
No,
it.
but
I'm
you
just
saw
hoping that Tobey Maguire's in
you
it.
saw like that Arabic picture with the Arabic subtitles.
No.
I'm
This was
just-
already in. If you're a fan of Spider-Man, then you knew they'd be out there because this was already this was already being whispered about in the community. Yeah, especially Andrew Garfield, who happens to be. This is a very unpopular opinion,
Yeah.
but he was my favorite.
No.
Yep, people hate him, but he was my favorite.
Is it because he's like the witty Spider-Man? Is that why?
I grew up reading Spider-Man. So if you're not a comic book nerd, then you have no idea why Spider-Man's popular.
Yeah.
But Spider-Man was relatable to the every boy, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so, you wanted to please his Aunt May. He has powers that don't go out into the universe where you're smashing worlds where you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
relate to.
Yeah.
But he can swing from rooftop to rooftop, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. He's nerdy enough that he can make his own webs, things like that.
Why didn't you like Toby? He was such a nerd.
I don't think he really conveyed the Spider-Man I grew up with.
I
Yeah.
see.
But people who didn't really read the comic books and only saw the movies first love Toby. That's for sure.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
There are people who read the comic books and still like Toby, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
But the reason why Andrew Garfield's character came out, man, we're going too much into Spider-Man.
This is good.
But the reason why Andrew Garfield's character came out and was written the way it was in response to Toby's character. So it was a little more emo, a little more serious. It was a little more depressing. Toby's character was like that. Andrew Garfield was also serious, but witty, could make light and make jokes.
Yeah.
Which was basically the Spider-Man that we all knew.
Yeah.
Like he would fight the Hulk and he would make jokes about being smashed like an ant. Things like that,
I
right?
see.
And so that's the Spider-Man we grew. Like, I don't know if Tobey Maguire's character would have done the same or
Mm,
reacted in the same
mm,
manner. Um, Tom Holland's character's okay. I mean, it's the newest one out and it's still developing, so we don't know how it's gonna go forward. But they wanted to make him really young, and so I guess he's just a developing teenager right
yeah.
now. Yeah, so who knows how they'll take that character. Hopefully they'll take it well. Anyway, the whole woke agenda that you mentioned is true. Now Hollywood's afraid that Spider-Man took out every single person that was going to see a movie and saw that movie, so no one's going to see any other movie after this.
Ah,
So that's what Hollywood is now saying
yeah.
amongst its own circle, right? That's what's being reported on. Um, But I would tend to agree. The woke agenda does have an audience. You might hate it, whatever it is, but it does
Yeah.
have an audience. But it's not broad. And is there something that's even broader that people can connect to? Apparently, Spider-Man, which I haven't watched, which I'm hoping Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come out in, connected with, right?
Yeah.
And this is my guess. So if you haven't seen it, you're with
I
me.
don't know if you should guess.
This is my
I
guess.
don't
My
know.
guess is that they play on nostalgia because
Okay.
nostalgia is one of the most powerful emotions that you could connect with.
Okay.
So they play on, and if I'm right, it's because, this is why my wife hates watching movies and dramas with me because I'll just
Uh,
say, this is what I think.
uh,
I'll just ruin it. But I could be wrong. I haven't seen it, but I know that there are things that I know. I know that it's a box office hit, and I
yeah.
know it wasn't woke because you
Yep.
said it.
Yep.
Just with those two, I would think that they would use nostalgia to grab people.
Ah,
And then you would be able to connect with the movie because of nostalgia. It could be to, now I'm gonna go into the plot. Is that okay? It could be to right some wrongs in some dimensions.
uh-huh.
And it could be that these things will help this current Spider-Man, this current dimension Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man,
Uh,
get propelled and mature to the future,
mm.
which you can connect with the whole, like, that movie, all those movies of coming of age movies, right? It could be like one of those kind of things. And so
Like,
those are just my guesses,
okay.
obviously. And it
Okay.
might not be entirely true,
Okay.
right? It could, but we know that old villains are gonna come out if you saw the
Mm.
trailer.
Mm.
So, we know I saw in the trailer Dr. Octopus, Electro, Sandman, all those guys were in the,
Yeah.
so these are all old Spider-Man villains.
I feel like everyone that was really hyped and wanted to see it has probably already seen it at this point.
Except me, because I just don't want to pay for a movie. I just think it's a waste
I
of
would
money.
say it's even worth. You should go to like a Dolby theater. Oh my goodness.
Do they have it in IMAX?
Yeah, I think they do at Riverside. I mean, that. Beep.
What?
I shouldn't say our location, right?
They know we're in Teaneck, man.
Riverside, California.
Riverside, India. Anyway, but um I guess bottom line is people don't want to be lectured in films about an agenda they don't agree with. I don't know what this has to do with I guess, if anything, for us as Christians, we should understand that where we pay our money is indicative of what we're not just able to put up with, but what we're going to support. And hopefully this is a sign that people will not be putting money on agendas that are like anti-Christian.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting. I think a lot less people support the woke agenda than the media would portray. And I think, this box office represents that to a certain degree. I remember there's another show that I watched on Netflix that had this woke agenda, and it just kind of changes the show for no reason. And I'm glad that our very own Peter Parker did the right thing.
Well, speaking of woke agendas, I heard that Matrix, which came out last night since our recording,
Oh, it came out.
we are recording right now on the 23rd, and this episode is coming out on the 27th.
Yeah.
But it came out on the 22nd. It got bad reviews,
Wow.
and there's only speculation. I haven't seen it. I have no time for that, but people are speculating it's because the Wachowski sister, now sister, used to be the brother. You
I
know,
have
they
no idea what that means
so the
right now.
Wachowski brothers are the two brothers that created The Matrix.
Oh,
They
okay.
wrote and they shot, directed
Oh, okay.
The Matrix. Huge box office success. In
Yeah.
fact, people used lines from The Matrix until today.
Yeah.
One of the things that got them really upset um, was that people would say you have to take the red pill.
What's the red one again?
The red one is reality.
Okay.
And so in the original Matrix, Morpheus offers two pills to
Yes.
Neo, who's the
Yes.
protagonist of the movie. And you could either take the blue pill. If you take the blue pill, you just wake up and it's like nothing ever happened, right?
Yep.
If you take the red pill, he says, "I'm going to take you down the rabbit hole, and you'll see how far it goes."
Yeah.
But it's just the truth. I'm not
Yeah.
going to add anything, things like that. He says that, right? And that has now been a metaphor for anybody who believes, since most recently, especially, but since the movie came out, where if you don't trust the media, if you don't trust our politicians,
Yep.
you believe that, there's a political swamp out there,
Yep.
people would say to each other, take the red pill. It became huge. And the creators of The Matrix, the Wachowski brothers, now calling themselves sisters, they hated that. They hated it. In fact, I believe Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla,
Yeah.
he tweeted cryptically in May 2020, take the red pill. And Ivanka Trump responded to Elon Musk's tweet. I think she said amen or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was like take the red pill, meaning because of what was going on, I don't know, high taxation. It was all this political stuff that was going on, right? And to which, and this is where my point comes into play, to which one of the Wachowski siblings, they responded "F you," the curse, right?
They're very angry.
Yeah, very angry that they're using his movie thing for purposes that he didn't want.
Yeah.
So I heard that this new Matrix is in response, a lot of it is in response to the whole red pill, blue pill. If you look at the trailers and pictures that are being shown from the Matrix, it has a lot of red and blue pills. And so I believe, and I could be wrong because I haven't seen it, but I
Yeah.
believe it's because they want to redefine what red pill and blue pill is.
Oh.
Well, that's interesting since we're
yeah.
talking about movies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard it's also in the toilet as far as ratings are concerned.
But you know what's not in the toilet is Spiderman. Who is the hero of the day?
You liked it so much, we're talking about it on a podcast, so it better be good when I watch it.
It's just the number 2 best-selling movie of all time in the U.S. Number 3 in the world. So
number 1 was Endgame, right?
Endgame, yeah.
Can we do the Spider-Man jingle for the outro?
Spider-Man. Are we allowed to do that? Isn't that like a copyright or something?
I don't know. I think it's old.
Okay. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next year. Can you believe it? 2022. Join us next year, January the 10th. We won't be releasing an episode on the 3rd, but join us next year.
Well, we're not releasing an episode on the 3rd because our very own Sam Yang has been invited to speak, not at one, but 2 retreats across the country. And we're very happy for him. If you're listening to this, we hope that you can lift up a prayer for Sam, that he can preach the gospel boldly and clearly to those that he's preaching in front of.
Please do. Please. I definitely need it. So we'll be joining you right here on January 10th, 2022. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. As always, and until the end of time, we love you. We miss you. Bye.
I think people are afraid of Omicron Prime. And so
I feel like we shouldn't make fun of the disease.
Why not? My name is Sam and I cannot lie. So these cookies were good. Oh, it got hard.
No, but it's soft on the inside still.
No, it got hard. I should have ate it the day of.
What do you mean, let's not? I haven't said Omicron once.
You said Omicron. You said that.